Let us not take this planet for granted. I do not take tonight for granted. Thank you so very much.
So hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting tutorial from fedible.com. And today I am going to show you finally step by step how to use Composure inside of Unreal. That being said, as you can see here, I have Leo holding his Oscar, talking about that we should not take this planet for granted. And I'm just telling you, I hope you're not taking this video tutorial for granted. And maybe one day I can ask you also a favor to buy me a cup of coffee and I can also make a living with this stuff. But until this happens, I guess I most likely will be already dead.
No, you can't go.
So, just kidding. Anyways, today I am going to show you how this freaking Composure actually works. And as you can see, I am using here a virtual set, and that project file, as always, you can download absolutely for free. Where at fedible.com. And as you can see, I'm using this virtual set, okay, that you can also use at home in real time. Now, as you can see, I can fly around here, and I have no render time, and the assets are actually pretty nice. Look at that. We have nice gloss reflections here and so on. But anyways, you will see that when you download this project file. But I would say I want to show you, look at this beautiful stuff here. If you're using your camera, which I'm doing here right now, look at that. I can position Leo in real time with my compositing wherever I want. So now he is in front of this table. That doesn't look too good, but if you wanna, bring him into the studio here with some nice bokeh effects, then he can be probably even up here somewhere and flying, as you can see here. But anyways, I think you get the whole point, because that's what you can do. You can position your composition in real time, and you can drag and drop the camera and the assets and put it to a place wherever you want to see that. And that's very helpful, not just for you as an artist to use it as a compositing tool, but also for the director, because he can see immediate results and he can direct you and tell you, look, this kind of sucks, I want to change it and make this here a little bit more purple or more green or more blurry or less blurry, and please pimp the blue eyes from Leo a little bit more, or whatever, right? You kind of get it. And most of the time, I have to say, if you want to make changes and following the client's directions, you basically say like, I don't give a shit.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Oh, tonight I'm so evil, right? So evil. What is cool, maybe also what I wanted to show you, is in the background you can even have, of course, a video live footage running in that virtual studio that can be also used in real time to have it in the background, as you can see here behind the wonderful speech of Leo's Oscar, night. And don't take anything for granted, okay? Don't take the millions for granted, okay? Just when they're on your bank account, then they're for granted. I would say let's have some fun, let's get started, and let's jump right into this from the project settings from the beginning. What do you have to use, the media player and the footage, and how you can actually use this and do everything. And I'm also going to show you not just that you can use a video footage like here that is basically pre-recorded. I also show you how you can use a live action video, a live footage with your video camera. In my case, I am using the GoPro Black 7 and I'm using the Elgato Camlink 4 because that's the Camlink 4K. That's, I would say, the most affordable solution to get a video signal into your computer. And by the way, believe it or not, I'm just using my GPU graphics card, the RTX 2080, And I also dive into this, and I wanted to do it really step by step, that I'm not going to miss anything. You will find more episodes because packing everything into one would take a little bit too long and can just be too much and too overwhelming. So I would say let's get started from the beginning and let's jump straight into this fun.
Let's get it started in here.
So first comes first. First of all, you want to make sure that you have been downloading Unreal 4.25. If you are not having the 4.25, it might not work because you need some specific shaders, and those shaders and materials are provided in 4.25. The next important step is that if you go into the project settings, you want to check that your alpha settings are set in the post-processing from disabled, so enable alpha channel support in post-processing, to linear color space only. If you do that, it requires to restart the project. Okay, so you see it here and then just click restart. Next thing you need to do, keep in mind that we are going to use Composure in order to create a composition. So that's a plugin and it's not activated automatically. So you click on plugins and then you type in Composure, and you want to make sure that this is enabled. All right, let's get started. As you can see here, I have my project file open, and this is my virtual studio, and that is basically my editor. You can see here in my project folder called Fedible, I created a new folder that's called Demo, and it's completely empty. When you're in this folder, you can of course create your own folder. I create now the so-called media player, and the media player is a wonderful tool in Unreal because no matter what specific media footage you would like to load, you can use the media player. So when you select the media player and you click on it, make sure you also check video output media texture asset. So this allows you also then to take other media like MP4 files, etc., and then also bring it into the player. So if you click enter, you see basically that when you have the star here, it's still not saved. So if you click like on save all, now it's actually saved in the entire project. And when you open the media player, you will see here a list underneath, like in any other media player, like, you know, maybe a list from the Windows media player or the VLC player. And it shows you all the footage I have been already, you know, loading in this project. And as you can see, by double clicking, you see like I have the screen from Leo. There is other footage in here. So like any kind of stuff, whatever you would like to load, basically you can load in here. Now, a lot of people also ask me and said, wait a minute, Bernhard, how can you actually bring a footage just inside of Unreal? When you click here on edit, you can also see that there is the project file path, okay? And that allows you to basically browse through your media file in any folder, and you just select it and you load it. Now, if you're not familiar with this, of course, you can also say, you know what? I want to load a media file directly, and you click again on media, and then you see file media source. And when you do that, you also have the power and the option to open that specific new file media source. And this is what I showed you also in the media player. And then you can select anything you have here. So if I have somewhere here from Fedible, videos, other videos like this one here, then I can load it and I can say, okay. And when I'm going into my media player, then I can also say, you know, you see it here, it's not saved yet, but this was just the other video I was just loading into my media player. Make sure, again, when you see this star here, you want to save all, so it's really in your projects, okay? Now let's get started. After you have been activating the Composure plugin, you will see it here on the Windows and you can activate it. Now, as you can see here, you can drag and drop this Composure window wherever you would like to have it in your user interface. I just put it here down right next to my content browser and my sequencer window. So when you see the Composure tab, then you can see it's completely empty, and you can do a right mouse click and say like, let's create a new composition. And you know, if you are familiar with After Effects, Nuke or Fusion or any other compositing tool, it's basically nothing else than layers what you are trying to create at the beginning. And when you see here, you have different classes, but you have also common classes you can create from the beginning, from scratch. It's called empty comp shot. And that is nothing else. Imagine as if you would open in After Effects a new project file and you say like, I'm starting a new composition, okay? So, and if you do that and if you click that, then you can see this composition table is basically completely empty. And you see it here on the top, you have your first layer created, and that layer is visible. Also, I wanna say, look at this, pay attention, there's a little eye icon. And with that, you can toggle the element in the rendering on or off, so it's visible or invisible. And you have also here turn media capture on or off later on for rendering. But as you can see, this is how you start setting up a composition. Of course, you can call it whatever. I call it demo, okay? The demo composition, whatever you want to call it. Now, you also can see now, and this is very, very important, that the demo layer in here has all the necessary elements and features saved in here in the Details tab. Okay, very, very important. So the composition itself has parameters, and those parameters are, you can access those parameters through the Details tab. And you can see here, this is very important because you have Composure, and in here we have to specify then inputs, but most important is actually the transform compositing pass. That basically is the way how you blend in between the layers you are going to add. At the moment, everything is empty. And how I like to start is actually with the background plate, because usually you understand, like even when you have layers in After Effects or even Photoshop, right? Nuke, Fusion, no matter, or DaVinci, what you use, you basically are kind of like used to having layers. Now, you have a video footage which usually comes on top of it, and then you have a CGI element which is on the bottom of your plate or in the layers, right? So what I do is here, and what you can do as well, is select the composition, what we just created. Do a right mouse click and then select add a layer element. Now in this particular case, I'm starting with the CG layer first, and the reason why is because I want to show you how you just add a cine camera or a sign camera, I just call it a cinematic camera, to your composition. You might be familiar with this. Remember, when you go back into After Effects and you would like to add a 3D camera in space in your composition, you need to specify a camera that you actually can pan and navigate, right? So if you click that, then you can see what's happening is automatically when you click on the CG element, and this is the nice stuff, when you have been already creating a camera, you see it here right now, then this camera is automatically linked immediately to your CGI element. And I want to show you also, if you don't have any camera created, right? And if you, let's say, have nothing here selected, no input cameras, how it actually also can be done. So let's get started from scratch with a new camera you create in your composition, and then we are going to add this camera, link that camera to our composition. First of all, let's keep in mind when you jump between the CG element and the composition, okay, look, the parameters are always changing. Keep in mind, when you select the demo, which is basically the composition, now you're dealing with all the parameters and the options you can change in the composition settings. And here you have all the specific settings and parameters for the CG element. All right, now, when you jump up here and you click on Cinematic, then let's create a new camera. First of all, that we can see exactly what's going on. I'm getting out from my cinematic camera. I press the G button. When you press G, you can see all the helpers from the actors, right? And now I drag and drop the camera actor onto my canvas. And as you can see, so this is my new camera, and I position it in my virtual set, right? And I can see immediately what's going on, even when I have the live video in real time playing in the background. So this camera, you can also see here, is now called Sign Camera Actor 3. Of course, you can also right mouse click and rename it by right mouse click and then going into Edit and then click Rename and just call it whatever, Demo Camera. Okay, so now what is important is if you go back into your CGI element, you cannot control the input of this camera through your CGI element. Keep in mind, you need to go on the level of your composition. So that's the top level. And when you're here in the composition itself, you need to specify with which specific camera you would like to work. Okay? So in order to do that, you select the composition, very important, and then in the search details you can type in target. And what that does, it helps you to filter out and say like, hey, help me finding my target camera actor. And as you can see, right now it's populated with virtual set media input 2 camera. And when you click on that, you can clearly see that here. When you click on perspective and you want to look through the camera, you still see they are connected. But this is exactly what you would like to change. So you click on this tab here, and then you exchange it with your demo camera. You see it here. There is your demo camera, and now your demo camera is actually linked to the CGI element. And as you can see, if you go into the editor here and select also the demo camera, and you move around, then you can clearly see here, now in your perspective view, right? This is linked now to your CG element layer. And by the way, you can, when you click here in the Composure window, this is the little tiny Composure window, when you click on the maximize item or like icon here on the top right, you can maximize this, and you can also scale it. You can make it super large. Yeah, you can even fill out the whole screen here, and you can close it. And also when you are on each layer, so for example here the demo or the CG element, when you have this selected and you press the P key, so P like Paul, then you can also open it and you can see basically the window enlarged, right? So no matter if you click the icon or the shortcut P. So this is basically how you do it. That means what you learned at this point right now is creating your own camera, and then when this camera is selected, okay, and you have it also selected here in the viewport, then this camera is now linked to your CG element. All right, now next step in our Composure composition is of course to add the so-called media plate. So no matter if you have a video footage, if it's a still image, you know, whatever, you can add this now to the Composure composition. Again, remember before I showed you that we created the video player. Here you can select from the playlist what specific footage you would like to see. I was choosing here, of course, the video with the green screen from Leo. And also what you have to keep in mind, if you pause it, right, then it's also paused and it's a still image in the Composure settings. But anyways, let's get started. So here we go. As you can see, our Composure composition is empty, as it says here. And in the background, we have our camera successfully linked to the CGI element, which is our virtual studio environment. Now in the Composure settings here, you select the demo Composure and then right mouse click, add layer element. If you do that, again, pick an element type. In this particular case, we would like to add now the media plate. So you click on media plate, and here we go. I rename this to Leo. And by the way, if you want to rename something, it's F2. Okay, that's the key that allows you to immediately edit or rename all of your layers or whatever. And when you look at this again, I want you to pay attention here on in the details tab section, right? That the parameters are always changing, because now this is the demo composition. And there are all the different parameters like transform, the composure itself, and so on, lots of other stuff here. And when you check the CG element, okay, you can also clearly see that the parameters, even if they are kind of similar, but they're changing because now they are just the specific parameters for that specific layer. And then Leo here is the same. And as you can see, you have also in the composure an input, and you have then the so-called media transform material parameters. And I really go then into this deeper because that's the most important thing. This is how you basically specify how you want to blend in between those layers. But again, first of all, we want to bring the media plate into our, we want to play the footage, and we want to bring the footage onto our media plate, right? So as you can see here, when you select the media plate, then you can see in the parameters the input section. And the input section has already a media texture input. And that is what you need to import a footage. So when you click on that, you can also see that you need to specify a so-called media source. It's empty. There is nothing. So you have two options now. You can click the button and scroll here for your video player, which you can see here. There is a little thumbnail, and that's exactly what you see here. That's the video player. Okay. And you can also take this and drag and drop it into the player. So I'll show you this. You drag and drop it, and then now you see it in the composure, which is here. And again, if you kill this or delete that, and you would pick it from here, you can still see the same. And also what you notice is my footage is not running. The reason why it's not running is because I stopped the media player. So if you click play and you bring this to the background, then you can actually see it's playing, right? So if you click pause, then the media is obviously not playing. We have here our composition, the demo composition, then we have our CG element. Okay, this is here, that's linked to the camera. It's our virtual production environment. And then on top of it, we do have our video footage. But now, as you can see, the question comes up, how can I make sure that first of all I key out the green color, the green screen color, and second of all that I tell and specify in my composition that those two elements I edit here, they need to play with each other. So basically saying, hey, I want to specify and say in my composition the video footage, what you can see here, should be on top of it, or should be the front, should be the top layer, and the CG element should be on the bottom. Keep in mind, however you structure the layer here in the composure doesn't really matter and doesn't affect anything, because it's all set up here in the project settings of your composure settings or the composition itself. So let's get into this. First of all, when I go back to my media plate, then everything, and this is a very, very important information, is actually done through materials or shaders. And you can see, this is why I mentioned in the very beginning that you should start this project with 4.25, because 4.25 is providing in the composure already all those different materials and shaders, and they're up to date. So as you can see, once you created that media plate, you can see now in the input we specified our video. But what we did not tell this system is actually how how you can actually key out the green color, right? So this is the next step. And when you go into the transform compositing passes, then you can see that it's a preset, so to speak, the template itself created already the so-called keyer material, And that material is a single pass chroma key material. And those parameters are here underneath. You can actually change. And I show you exactly how you can do this and apply that stuff right away. So the first thing, as you notice, is when you look at those chroma keying options and features, you need to specify the key color. That means what specific color would you like to key? And because there is no color specified, you click on the plus button. And then you get here the color palettes when you click on this crossbar. And now you can pick a color. In this case, very simple. I pick the green one. I can accept it and say like, hey, that's my green screen color. So that's what I would like to key out, right? Now, right underneath in the parameters, you see the material parameters. And those are usually the features and the options you might be familiar when you have been using Adobe After Effects or any other compositing tool, because now you get through the shader or that material that was created as a template for you in the background, you get all those options. And you can see that you can, for instance, affect immediately the vignetting. Okay, so how strong should the devignetting outer edge be, and so on. I also make this big here that you can see it better. And then you can, of course, also see that you have different options. You can play around with the values to adjust the key like you would do in After Effects, right? Or with any other software. You see also you have inner amounts, outer amounts. You can change all those settings and you can play around. One, of course, that kicks in is the pre-blur kernel size. So you can clearly see if you increase or decrease that number, then you can also get rid of the despill, right, of the green, from the green screen that is basically getting on it, on the character, or it wasn't keyed out very well at the beginning. And so it's really up to you, depending on the shot, that you find something that works for your specific setup and for the shot you would like to key. So there are all those settings, and you can play around with white clip, chroma contrast, backclip, and so on. I'm not going into any details in that because it really depends on the shot. But what I think is also very important is you can clearly see you have actually the key color or the chroma keying material in here, okay? And then right underneath, it's a combination of three shaders. You have the despill, and underneath the despill you have to erode. So that means, you know, by this template, the artists or Unreal wanted to give you already the option and the feature to play around with like the despill options, that you can adjust those color variations depending on your shot, or like, for example, also with the erode kernel size. And you can clearly see what impact it has if you go to an extreme and how you can impact that shot. But what is very important to understand is, instead of just having, you know, like parameters you might be used to have like in After Effects, everything, the whole process of keying runs through shaders and materials. And of course, you could go into this key material here. You could open this up and look at the complexity of this shader or material, but I'm not getting into this. It's just for you to understand, whoa, wait a minute, there is a shader in the background, and that specific shader helps me to do the keying, okay? And it's not just one shader for that template. You have multiple shaders stacked on top of it that helps you for the keying, okay? So this is what I think is very important to understand, and to know, hey, where do you change actually the settings of your footage, or how can you actually do the comping, and how can you bring those elements in Composure together. Now, even so, when we see this here right now, and I click on my CG element, I click on Leo, and I click on my demo is still empty. And you're probably wondering why. We brought in now the CG element, we have it, and we brought in the media plate, and we have that. But the composition itself, we didn't specify anything. We didn't say, how do you want to treat that comp? How do you want to treat the composition? What do you want to do between the CG element that is in the background, or you would like to see in the background, and how do you want to treat it with the video? How do you want to merge it, right? So this all happens here again in the Composure node on the composition level itself. So remember, it's not here on the CG element, it's not here. The settings and parameters for this is on the Composure composition level. And then you will see that we said, yes, we have our target camera, that is the demo camera. That's all what we have. But we didn't specify how those layers should interact with each other and how the passes should transform. And this is what you do here in the so-called transform passes. And as you can see, this is empty. That means because it is empty, we didn't tell the system, hey, what to do with those two layers or how you would like to treat them. Now, we can do this by clicking Add Element, the plus button here. You click it, and then you can see, okay, we created a custom material pass. And that custom material pass, again, gives you the option to put a material inside of the composition. Now, that material, what you need here in order to blend those two levels is actually fairly easy. But because I want to keep it super simple and I also don't want to go into basically like shader creations, I created in this demo scene file that so important material for you. And of course, it's free for download. So that means in the folder, you see it here, Fatty Bull Comp Material. There is this basic material you can actually create in a minute. I show you here a screenshot. It's really nothing else. And I just fly through here that I created a new material. It's a post-process material. And what I also did is I created here an over. You might be familiar with this if you have been using Nuke or like even Fusion, etc. And then I created parameters in which I specified and said, hey, this is my background and this is where I would like to see my video footage. And this is how I created it. So it's very, very easy also to read and to understand. But what it's doing, and this is the crucial, critical part, and I think this is what a lot of people got confused and it drives them crazy and nuts. You have to create that material and you have to drag and drop it into the demo Composure composition into the transform pass field into this material. And I do it right here, right now in front of you. And as you can see, once you have this, there you see it in as a preview. That's just a texture map in the demo here in the composition, because that's on top of it. And you can see when you're going to the composition itself, this is what you see, because we still need to identify what do we want to show in the composition in the foreground and what do we want to use as the CG element layer. Now, if you scroll further down here, you will see underneath of that material that I created for you, it's called the Fedibles Comp material for the comp layer, you see that, hey, there are now two input elements. And the first input element is the video footage, and the second one is the background element. So that layer management here doesn't really matter what comes on top and whatever. What matters is that you drag and drop the correct footage into these both slots. And for example, if this clearly says this is the video footage, then you click the select bar here and you select now your video footage, and that is Leo. Boom, as soon as you do that, the video footage comes on top of that layer. So this is the real layer management here. That's the layer management you might be most familiar with, even when using Photoshop or like Adobe After Effects, right? Super simplified. And the background layer wasn't specified yet. So here comes the magic, because now I say, hey, take from Composure my CG element as my background layer. So if we do that, boom, you can see you have your composition setup. And look at this, even if you have the CG element here on top of the video footage, that doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't matter how you would read it here from the user interface. What actually matters is how you have been setting up the material and that shader, and how that shader and material, you know, identifies the input elements. And that's what I did. And I showed you here before, I did it with an over, so to speak, element. And I said like, hey, in the input A comes in my video footage, and my background, which is my CGI footage, a CGI element, is on the B layer, right? So on the background layer, whatever. And then just output it. That's it. But like I said, I think this is critical because lots of people got really frustrated not seeing this documented anywhere. And I believe in, I'm a 3D visualizer, right? I believe in visualization. And that means I'm saying the best way to learn, to teach, is actually also showing it to you in a live action footage and what you have to do. The visualization itself is the best learning experience ever. So that means when you look at this process here right now, we finally created successfully a simple setup, right, for your live action footage. And that footage can be now pre-recorded with the green screen. It really doesn't matter, or like you have a live footage coming in. I will also get to this point. But before we get there, also look at this. I want to show you and test it also when you click now the media player, that you can clearly see it's running and you have a first shot setup, and it's also going through this camera. And maybe what I wanted to show you here immediately, that's the beautiful thing about you know, real-time compositing is, of course, we can drag and drop that camera anywhere in our studio, you know, and we can put Leo basically anywhere, wherever we want. He can be even, you know, doesn't really matter, like in front of this wall here. So, but what I would like to show you also really quick on top of it is how you can make super quick changes to your camera. Because as you can see here in this demo, that the background is completely sharp, and this is because of the camera settings. So when you select the demo camera, you can find in this project file, then you can change here the manual focal distance. And as soon as you do that, you can see I can blur out my background, my focus is now on Leo, and it looks much more integrated. Of course, if you haven't seen my other cinematography videos, also how to use the camera system, how to use the sequencer, and how to create cinematic shots, I would say for sure check it all out. But in this particular case, you can see I am just playing with my lens, with my manual focus, and also I have been using a blade count of 5. And my current aperture is at 2.8. If I would go lower, then the bokeh effect gets stronger and it would get brighter. If you go like higher, then everything is of course sharp. So this is basically like basic understanding of camera operation. So the next thing I would like to show you is of course how you can add a foreground. As you can see here, and you have been following all the other steps, you can see that I was creating a sphere. I get out of here, and you can clearly see that this sphere is now always in the foreground, and I can position it wherever I want. So the question is, of course, wherever you move it in space, it can show up here. You can also scale it, you can rotate, whatever you want to do, but that's also pretty cool in real time. And now let's dive into that, how you actually can add this foreground in your composition to make sure that you get even a much better experience and much more control when using Composure. So the first thing I did, I was just adding from the basics a sphere, dropped it on my canvas in my editor, and here we are, that's it. And now the next thing you want to do is, like I showed you previously, you want to go into your composition here and then right mouse click and add a new layer element. And again, we are creating a CG layer element. Now this time call it foreground or FG or whatever. You can also call it sphere. Give it a name, whatever you feel like, you know, this is what you would like to put in front of the footage. Now, as you can see, when I did that, I again have to specify in my parameters that I need to add specific elements I am picking or I'm choosing, I'm selecting on that particular layer. So what you need to do is you need to capture an actor to the foreground layer. So when you go and select again the foreground and you look then here under the composure section, so you go here and you see now, okay, those are all the actors I'm going to use in my composure sections. Then you can see that capture actors, there are 0 arrays and you want to add an element. And now when you did that, you can also open this and you can see like, hey, everything I'm going to select from here, from my list, I want to select some actors I want to have on that particular layer. You know, I want to include and not exclude. So when you click on exclude, it would everything exclude. If you click on include, it would everything include. But you also need to specify what specific actor you would like to pick and you would like to choose. And as you can see, this is very tricky at the beginning, because people also asked me and said they got confused and said, Bernhard, how can I choose an actor? I cannot find here anything and make a selection. The reason why is because the actor set works through the layer. And if you haven't seen that window, you just click on window and then you can see here layers and you can turn this on or off. Okay, and in my case, I have it up here on the top corner. And then you can create a new layer and you can create as many layers as you want. And then you can also specify what you want to add on top of it, or like, you know, add to that specific layer. So in this particular case, I selected the sphere and then I create, either way, you can create an empty layer or you say like add a selected actors to new layer. So if you do that, and I can call this here now sphere underscore demo, then you can see that layer was created. And if you go back now to your foreground and you want to identify and include a specific layer or a scene actor, this is where you do it. So again, you want to include it and then you click on sphere demo. So this is what we just created. And as soon as you do that, you see now that this specific CG element only has that actor visible. You can of course also see it here in the alpha or alpha. You can see it's there, and everything seems to work like it should, right? You can clearly see even when you're in your camera settings and you go through your camera. So this is exactly what you wanted. This is now your foreground plate, so to speak, and you included it. And if you go back to your Leo plate, if you check the CG plate and then the compositing plate, you would actually see everything on top of it. But I missed something and I want to correct this for you too as well. Because remember what I said before, when you try to composite everything in your Composure compositing level settings, you need to have a shader or a material ready that also understands to read the foreground element. Now, when you look into that material section here, I created another material for you that you can use. It's called Fedibles Comp material that includes foreground, video, and background. This is what you need to drag and drop into this layer. So, for example, when you go to my materials, this was what we had before. It was basically the material, I called it video on background. So when you do that, right, you see you only have the video footage, which is Leo, and then you have the background element, which is the CG element 1. And when you do that, you can clearly see the sphere, as we would have had it before, is in your CG environment, but it always stays in the background, right? And the problem why it stays in the background and is not in the foreground is because you need to have that specific shader or material, and you need to drag and drop it into your composition. Now again, that material I previously created here is now an update, and it's called, I called it That's Fatty Bulls material. That includes now the background, the video footage, and the foreground. And if you swap this out, look what's happening. You don't have just the video footage and the background element anymore. So if I take the foreground and plug it in, I have now three inputs, or three input elements. I have the video footage, then you have the background element, so we want to choose here our CG element, and you have now the foreground element, which is the sphere. Now, all three combined, this is how it looks like, and it works. So you can make this larger here, you can go through your shot, and wherever your sphere is, you will see it will stay in front of it. And wherever you position your camera, even if you go closer, it will stay in front of it and is not in the background. Now, I think that you hopefully got now this introduction and also the basic understanding how important it is when you use Composure to understand that in the input levels, in the input elements, you specify with those shaders how you actually do the composition, how you actually set it up, and how you can control it. And I think what is major is really having also those shaders provided, those materials that are going to help you to get started with a simple composition. Also in that case with the media input, when you start playing now the footage, we can check the footage and see like, hey, is this all working? It is. And I think that's about it as much as I wanted to show you. As you can see, it you really need to play with this. You really need to set also some, you have to have some focus and understand that a lot of those settings is actually, it's important. It's all in the parameters and it goes through the shaders. But once you have something successfully set up, like that specific template, you can use it over and over again. And I also have to say, you don't need to go into all the crazy shader networks, because, you know, I'm a user as well, and I say, yes, you can, of course, develop your own shaders. You can create custom materials and tweak them and refine them. But I'm also saying, look, I want to use it, and I just want to, you know, fly through this and make quick changes and just use it as an artist to finally control all my final steps. So in my next video tutorials, because this is still not done, I have a couple of episodes for the virtual production and digital studio setups. I'm going to show you also how to use it finally, how to use Composure finally in the output with the sequencer. I think that's very important. And of course also how you can make color corrections and how you can control every single individual asset by itself. I think that's very, very important. But because of the complexity and also the focus you have to have in going through all those elements, I think it's much better to look into the next video tutorials. I couldn't stuff everything into one big tutorial, otherwise this would really go too far and explode. But I hope this was very helpful for you. Please subscribe and stay up to date. As soon as I'm going to release the next video tutorials, you will get notified, and you can also follow up. If you have any questions, of course, feel free. And last but not least, I also wanted to show you my next video tutorials that are coming on top of that series. I'm also going to show how you can feed a camera. That can be a web camera. I'm going to use like a GoPro 7 a camera, how you can feed it directly into your GPU card, and how you can do this not just with a pre-recorded video, but you can do it with live action footage. Okay, so stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button that you're really up to date, and yes, don't forget to download this project file and all the provided materials and shaders for free, of course, like always, from my website fedibull.com. That being said, happy pixeling, happy creating, have fun, talk to you later. Take care.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno d'intorno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto Adoncino d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto Adoncino d'amor. Non più avrai questi bei panacchini, quel cappello leggero galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio d'onesco color, quel vermiglio d'onesco color.